Retro Hangover is supported via Patreon by listeners like you. We would especially like to thank patrons Lyle McCarnes, Ashton Ruby, Randall Quiggle, Tony G, Katie Quigg, Paul Ramallo, Raging Demon, Masked Llama, Ozzy Garcia, Keith Gasper, and Dischimera. Your continued engagement and generous donations are deeply appreciated.
Open your ears and crack some beers. You are listening to episode 101 of Retro Hangover.
Classic gamers, welcome to the podcast where we are undoubtedly ultimately unyielding using unused unilateral undying utilities. This is episode 101 of Retro Hangover. I am your co-host Chris Copleen with special guest Ozzy Garcia. And, as always, your host, your host, Shane Pedantically Paced Dick Dragon Koski.
You know, I'm not entirely sure what unilateral utilities are, but they seem very functional.
Yeah,
they
seem utilitarian.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're effortlessly efficient.
I love your alliteration, man. Honestly, it's one of my favorite parts. I look forward to what else you're going to come up with. Just meaningless sentences that sound good.
They make sense to no one. I think that didn't come off as clever as I thought it would. In any case, this is episode 101, I think. So
yes.
Thank you for joining us for episode 100.
I'm pretty sure.
We hope. But Ozzy, thank you for joining us. Like, you've been on a lot of our recorded guidance anyway. They're going to get out there, but you've been with us, done some recordings on the show before, and welcome to the main show. Thanks, man. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you guys. And I guess I've been promoted. No fanfare, but you know, it's kind of, I think this is the first time that I'm going to show up, like, for most listeners, because I don't think any of the other recordings we've done have come out yet. So
no, I'm hoarding them all.
Like a dragon, would you say?
One might say.
But yeah, I mean, it kind of feels weird. Like, I'm out of time, you know, like the loop is just all messed up because, you know, I've been on other episodes, but this is kind of like the chronologically first episode that, you know, I'm on. So thank you guys. I'm really humbled and honored to be part of this podcast, this fine podcast that you guys have put together.
Well, we're humbled to have you.
We don't even know what to say to that now.
I guess, yeah.
We're just so flattered.
In case you don't know, Ozzy was one of the permanent hosts of the Region Free Gamers podcast, which actually ties into something really well right now. We have officially come out with the King of Games 2000 for all our Patreons. So even at the lowest tier at $1 a month, you can get all the King of Games 2000 plus all our $1 a month content. That content will be available on after January 6th of 2022. But right now, that's all exclusive to our patrons. So if you want to head over to Patreon and listen to that tournament, which is completely with the Region Free Gamers podcast, and you could go to their Patreon too if you don't like us, because fuck us. But you can go to them and you can get it through their Patreon too. Yeah, why not both? But if it needs to be either or, you can do that. It's a fun time.
Can I plug it, Chris and Shane? I mean, I just want to say, as a supporter of both podcasts, it's not just that I have a vested interest in the podcast succeeding, but I love this concept. When originally in the Region Free Gamers podcast, we did the 98 tournament, which was, you know, really, really fun, but just extremely difficult to put together because it was basically just Paul just doing all the editing. It really was a runaway success. I mean, everyone loved it. There was so much heated discussion. And then when you guys proposed doing another round, I mean, I remember I was still involved in the podcast at the time. And Paul was like, well, I mean, we can do it because now we can share editing duties. So I'm just really glad that you guys put it together. I'm sure having a little bit of knowledge about how things are gonna go in the tournament, I'm sure that people are gonna rage. So so really, if you want to get ahead of that and you don't want to have it spoiled by anyone inadvertently, get on it, because from what I understand, you guys are not going to release it to like the general audience until later on.
Mm-hmm.
So get in on the Patreon action, because it's going to be really fun. Get in on the conversation. There's a lot of hype right now. You guys set up like a private, dedicated Discord server for debating. I'm sure that's going to be very civil. So
absolutely. It's already been thoroughly entertaining, especially to someone who knows how this whole thing went down. Seeing the predictions and like the tiers that people are putting together, I'm just
it's like a slow motion train wreck. Like you're seeing it. You're seeing that it's gonna happen, and you're like, okay, but it's actually gonna be worse than I probably expected. So yeah, man. I mean, I'm really glad you guys are doing it. By the time that we're recording, the first episode and the second episode came out. The first episode was Pokemon. Shane, I love your Darwinian approach to Pokemon. It was awesome. And I think ultimately the right choice was made. Whatever that was.
Of course you do.
But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you guys are putting it together. I had to listen to the second episode, but yeah, man, I'm really glad that you guys are putting that together.
Oh, thanks, man. And you will be part of that later on in the series as well. So.
Yeah, I'm like really, really worried that I'm gonna piss off so many people because I ever since I recorded that, I feel very, I wouldn't say very bad. I just kind of regret, like I usually do. I went overboard hating on a particular game.
At least it wasn't Xenogears.
Yeah, and it just so happens to be the game that ended up advancing to the finals. So it's a beloved game. So I kind of feel like I'm gonna get a lot of hate for it. So I'm just kind of bracing myself for it.
All right. I mean, we look forward to that. But we'll start out this episode. We'll keep you on the hot seat there, Ozzy, and we'll talk about what games have you been playing lately. What you've been up to?
Yeah, man. I mean, as you guys know, I mean, sometimes, for me nowadays, it's a little bit harder to get my game time in. So I've been doing a lot of game adjacent things. Like I just finished reading Sid Meier's Memoirs, and that was really cool. I mean, I've always kind of admired Sid Meier. Wow, that was really good from afar. But I kind of wanted to know a little bit more about his game design philosophy and the like, and I just kind of wanted to see the trajectory of his career. And it was a good book. I think that it was interesting. I think that he made it very engaging. It wasn't really like nuts and bolts. It wasn't really like, hey, I'm going to go into, I don't know, Sid Meier's colonization and, really explore how every decision was made. It's more like, hey, so then we did this game, and he just kind of gives you a little tidbit of something he learned in that particular production. So it makes for a very breezy read. It's like 200 and something pages, and it's very quick. So it was a fun time. But beyond that, I mean, in terms of games, I started playing about a week back The Takeover on Switch, which is literally Streets of Rage with the serial code filed off. Like they're not even like trying to hide it. It's just like you start in the same level. You have like the same character types. It's basically Streets of Rage. And it's cool because the combat is great. Like the beat 'em up feels crunchy as a beat 'em up should. It has a story. The thing about it is that I really don't like the art style. The art style is kind of really off-putting in a way, and there are cutscenes and the hand-drawn cutscenes are just not to my liking. And they're very kind of jarring with the art style and the aesthetics of the actual gameplay. But I'm looking forward to kind of seeing through that game, and it's probably not too long. But last night I also played. I started playing. Let me see if I get this right. Monster Boy in the Cursed Kingdom and the Cursed Kingdom. It's really hard to get like all the naming conventions of like the Wonder Boy, Wonderland, Monster World series down. But really, really fun game. Like I really was surprised at how good that game felt. When I started playing it last night, and contrary to The Takeover, like really, really good art style, like very good hand-drawn animation. very reminiscent of like the Wonder Boy remake that came out a few years ago. But compared to that game, it's designed in modern times, and so it feels like it has made a lot of progress, and it feels like it incorporates the progress that has been made over the last 30 years of game design. And so it feels like a fuller, more complete game than the Wonder Boy remake. So definitely, you guys, if you I think Chris, you picked it up on Limited Run Games.
I did.
So definitely give it a go. Definitely open it, crack open that collector's edition. It's really, really nice. Brings a cloth map in it, so it just feels like a very well put together game, and like really a love letter to the Wonder Boy Monster World series. So yeah, man, that's what I've been playing lately.
Yeah, collectors and their Schrodinger's cloth maps and their Schrodinger's soundtracks.
Yeah,
but it's sealed, man, and they can get a great WADA deal on it, and it's
ready to go. It's ready to be WADA graded.
WADA's like the worst thing that's happened to video games.
I hope that by the time that this releases, like WADA is already like indicted for like securities fraud and shit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably gonna be like, I don't know, like 3 weeks from now, but I hope that that's enough time for like the Southern District of New York to just kind of do their thing and put something together. Here's hoping.
Yeah, one can dream. How about you, Shane?
Oh man, let me tell you, it's almost like, well, actually, this is more apropos for this episode than I had first realized, but it's almost as if it is the year 2000 again, my friends, for many reasons.
Good year.
One of which being I've been playing a shitload of Diablo 2. As I'm sure most folks know, Diablo 2 Resurrected, the HD remaster of the classic looting game as it is, just came out. What is it? I guess 2 weeks ago now ish, something like that. Man, that's pretty much all I've been playing, except for the namesake for today's episode, of course. But I've already got like 4 characters that I've been playing through, and turns out that game's still good, despite what evidently a lot of folks in our King of Games 2000 Discord would like to believe.
They don't think Warrior needs food.
I'm definitely not salty about any of that discussion whatsoever. But no, man, I've been having a lot of fun with it.
How did they handle? Are you playing it on PC?
So I am a simp for Diablo, as it turns out, and I have it on PC and on my Switch, and I play it on both.
Can you cross transfer characters?
Yep.
And save data?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's the big reason that I did that. So I bought it first on PC, as is tradition. It's the right way to go. Also because I kind of wanted to wait like a day to see what the feedback was about the Switch version, because there was no beta on the Switch, unlike the other platforms. So the Switch, given what it is, I kind of wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to run like total garbage. And no, it's pretty buttery smooth. It plays really well. And the funny thing is like Diablo 2 was the only entry in the Diablo series that never had a console release. The first one did on the PlayStation. And then, of course, Diablo 3 was cross-platform on pretty much everything. So now it's finally got its console like counterpart, and surprisingly, it actually plays really well. The only thing I would argue did not make the translation was inventory management. That sucks ass. But like they had figured out how to do that right in Diablo 3, but Vicarious Visions decided not to mess with it for the remaster of 2. And so you still kind of have to move a cursor around with your analog stick in order to like organize your inventory, and that's rough. Yeah. But outside of that, though, I've been having a really good time with it. And besides an inordinate amount of Diablo 2, I have begun playing Drakengard on my PS2 because the short version of the story, when my wife and I went on our little road trip this past summer, we stopped at a family member's house, and their partner just like had a copy of Drakengard on their shelf, and I was like, dude, that's awesome. Like, do you know, like, that game is worth a lot of money? And he's like, no. He's like, I just played it when I was a kid. I still have it. Like, I liked it, so I hung on to it. I'm like, oh, that's really awesome. And he was just like, yeah, you can borrow it if you want. Like, if you want to play it. I'm like, this game's like $200. You know that, right? It's like, yeah, just, bring it back sometime. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay. Yes, I will do that.
Is it that expensive right now?
Yeah, man. That game is not cheap.
Yeah, because I have it. I don't have the manual, but I didn't realize that it had gotten that expensive.
Yeah. Well, because so the thing is like I started looking into that after I finished playing Nier, right? Because I was just like, oh, well, I want to know, what led up to this and, all that good stuff. Because it's all related. And I was like, well, guess I'll never know because I'm not going to pay like $250 for this game. But yeah, I just happened upon a copy of it. So I'm trying to get it done before Thanksgiving because the family's all descending upon our area for the holiday and he will be here. Yeah. And I want to give it back to him. Like, I don't think he'll care. Like, he's super nonchalant about it, but like, I want to make sure that I return it to him because I don't know when the next time is I'm going to see him. And I feel weird about borrowing someone's like $200-300 video game. So I'm trying to finish it, but without going into a full like rapid fire review here or anything, I'm having a hard time. It's
not a good game, man.
It's not great.
Not really that good of a game.
It's really not. And I was like, I'm kind of disappointed because,
it's not Nier. It's not Nier.
It's not at all. Like, as soon as I got into it, I was just like, oh, this is clunky. Like, what am I even supposed to do? And then they're just like, oh, you're getting your ass handed to you? Well, you could go and grind the levels you played before over and over again. And I'm like, oh no. So that's how that's going.
It's a worse version of Dynasty Warriors, essentially. For the most part.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And you know what? I actually wouldn't have an issue with that if it wasn't for the fact that the controls are just complete ass.
Yeah, it was made by Kavia, and Kavia is a developer that has shown up quite a lot on the Region Free Gamers podcast in our Bad Games episodes.
Great.
Because they did such great gems as Beatdown, Fist of Vengeance, but then they did Nier, and that kind of redeemed them for a bit. And then they went under because they weren't very good at what they did. But it's kind of Yoko Taro. That's where he worked, and that's where he was able to do his crazy shit, with multiple endings and the like. But in terms of like their game design and the technical aspects, they were pretty much a B tier developer. So I remember playing Drakengard way back. I rented it from Blockbuster. And even back then, I was like, "Ooh, this is it's not very good, huh?" But I'm glad you're playing it, man. I mean, I hear that the story is all kinds of insane.
Well, I wouldn't know because I haven't got far enough to see damn near anything yet. Because it's just like, go grind. I'm like, great. So anyway, that's me, man. It's mostly just been those two things for the most part. Diablo 2 has been dominating everything, but. What about you, Chris? You're still kind of on the road, right? So like, what have you been doing to pass the time?
There's no fucking kinda about it. I'm definitely on the road. And right now I'm just holed up, stuck here in North Carolina.
East or west?
East. I'm right right outside Camp Lejeune in Jacksonville, North Carolina. So yeah, I'm in Jacksonville.
Nice. Another Jacksonville.
Exactly. But before that, I was in Virginia. I'm here for another 2 weeks, and then I go back up to Virginia, and I'm there for a month, and then I head back down to my home, Jacksonville. So yeah, it's a nice little jaunt that I'm on, 2.5 month jaunt. We tried to get as many recordings done before I left, but it just can't work out that way because of all the shifting and shit. So as far as what I've been up to, I started playing after we recorded the Alice episode. I started playing Illusion of Gaia, which Shane lent to me, and Shane like even said, "Just take it." I don't know. It was like, I don't know if it's cursed or something, but it's fun. I had a good time with it.
I mean, I was literally just giving it to you. Like, it's yours now. Like, it's not like a fucking monkey paw or anything. I was
about to say, did the pins all curl and they said you have to get rid of it or?
Nah, it's just like, it's one of those things where I just don't, you have much more reverence for physical copies of games. So I figure you would appreciate it more. Like, if I want to play it, I'll just emulate it.
And yeah, I do appreciate it. And thank you. I was having fun with it, but then I went on the road. I wasn't able to get through it all. So then I got on the road. I started playing a bunch of games for the show because I took my Wii U with me and my PC with me. So I was able to play that. And I will say that the game that we're doing for next week's episode, was it Ghouls and Ghosts? Ghouls and Ghosts. Not Ghosts and Goblins, Ghouls and Ghosts. I brought the fucking wrong controller with me. So I brought this like Power A PlayStation 3 controller with me with a jank ass D-pad, and that was rough. But I'll talk more about
that. For
a
game that's already horrendously difficult.
Yeah, I'll talk more about that on the next episode, though. We'll get into it there. So after I got done with all the games for the podcast, I started playing Final Fantasy II Pixel Remaster. And yes, I have to say this. Everyone does have to say it before ever talking about Final Fantasy II. This is the Japanese Final Fantasy II, the one that's more like Saga than Final Fantasy. And I fucking love the game. I know it's busted. I know it has its issues. I know it's imperfect. But every single time I play Final Fantasy II, I love it more and more and more. I realize just how far ahead of the curve it was in terms of storytelling, especially for, an early JRPG. Super somber, super depressing, but like that's not something you would really expect from a game of that era, especially with the limited space considerations. You just weren't getting it on an NES, maybe on the PC, but certainly not on the NES. So I have a really big appreciation for it. And I don't hate the leveling system as much as everyone else does. Just play the game. Don't try to cheese it, and you'll do fine. I'll try and get a more fleshed out review for the patrons and everybody. But I'll just say, look, just go play the game. Play the Pixel Remaster first and foremost. Don't play the fucking NES version. If you do, you're an idiot. But play the Pixel Remaster. Play Dawn of Souls if you have to. I'm having a great time with it. And I don't know what I'm going to play after that. I'm probably going to stay with the Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters or go to like an Ys title. I don't know. I just have a huge backlog and I have a lot of time to knock it out while I'm here. So I'll do what I can.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like given how our schedule is shaping up into the next year, I feel like Ys might be a good choice.
Yeah, I might wait to get home and use my TurboGrafx 16 Mini because I have the original one on that. I also have the Sega Master System physical copy I could use for a comparison. So I'll just wait until I get home in November and then start playing Ys. I've played Ys 1 in the PC before, and it's a really good game. So I'm really looking forward to playing the originals. But I'm not playing those now, so I'm not going to get into it. Fucking play Final Fantasy 2. It gets a lot of hate. One of our patrons, also a host of the Main Quest, did an episode on it on his show, and he played the NES version, and that's an example of why you should not play that version. So go play any remaster of that game. It'll be a much better time.
Well, there you go.
All right, so I guess that's it for what we've been playing lately. So yeah, went kind of longer as usual, which is fun. It's a good time. I guess you could say our conversation was Undying.
The segue.
Much like our game this episode, which is Clive Barker's Undying. No, Clive Barker's Undying.
It belongs to Clive
Barker. The Barker that belongs to Clive.
Clive's Barker.
Clive barks up trees or something.
But Shane, seeing as you are the one who wants to talk about this spooky episode in the month of October.
Yes.
How about you give us a brief history of Clive Barker Undying?
As it turns out, if you're an acclaimed horror film writer, director, and producer that decides to branch out into the world of video games, you tend to get what you want. In the year 2000, Clive Barker, perhaps most notably of Hellraiser fame, approached Electronic Arts with an idea for a first-person shooter set in a haunting, early 1900s world with strong themes of the occult. As he is wont to do, Barker would both pen the script and act as producer for the project. This would not be a game begun from scratch, however. Developer DreamWorks Interactive, who would get absorbed and become EA Los Angeles by the time of release, had already started development on a project with Steven Spielberg in early 1999 that never came to fruition. This foundation would be what Barker would build upon, though the results would look nothing like the team's original vision. For example, the main protagonist would be overhauled from an all-powerful superhuman to a much more relatable Irishman. Development would be handed over to a relatively unproven team, with many folks taking on major roles for the first time in their career. The game would ultimately be dubbed Clive Barker's Undying, which communicates the game's central narrative, while also unabashedly relying on some serious name recognition. Undying would see release for Windows PC on February 21st of 2001 and Mac OS on June 11th of the same year. A PlayStation 2 port was planned, but never managed to see the light of day. Reviews were generally positive, with a few reviewers stating that while they appreciated the atmosphere, it eventually just lost its momentum. Unfortunately, the game was a total commercial flop. Undying's sales were so low that EA had to scrap a planned multiplayer patch in addition to completely canceling a planned sequel. In the end, Undying became a relatively unknown cult favorite. I suppose you could say that for those select few, the game truly lives up to its name. And that is your very brief history of Clive Barker's Undying.
We just can't kill the pun for this name,
Nope.
can we?
Nope, it just
The
keeps
puns are flying.
keeps coming back.
So as you can tell, the brief history is rather short, and I need to thank Ozzy a lot for pointing some things out and giving me some sites about how to, look up a little bit more into brief histories of games, because there is like absolutely nothing about this.
Yeah, with games like this, like you really have to go deep, into like Moby games and, like Clive Barker fandom wikis, and stuff like that.
Some really dusty GeoCities page somewhere.
Yeah, like ancient tomes, or the like. I will point out that, DreamWorks, it was a studio that was founded by Steven Spielberg.
Mm-hmm.
So this was, eventually it was absorbed by EA. But they did do the Medal of Honor series, which was, by the way, produced by Steven Spielberg. So, and they also did Jurassic World Trespasser, which I know has a cult following, to say the least. The funny thing is that compared to the Medal of Honor games, this team really was done by a bunch of folks, that didn't seem to have been in the director's position or producer's position in the past. And I think most of them came from the Taifu Wrath of the Tiger team, if you guys remember that game on the PS1.
No.
So exactly. So I think, based on what I saw, I think that's where they came from. And then, after Undying came out, I think they were put on development duties for Medal of Honor Frontlines on the PS2. So they went on to be a decent team. I think by this time, the guys that went on to form Infinity Ward and do the Call of Duty series had already left. So part of it may have been that the team was relatively in flux at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they just had, Medal of Honor, Allied Assault on one side, and the A team was working on that. And the B team was working on Undying. And you can definitely, we'll get into it, but you can definitely tell that it's a team kind of going through growing pains in a way. I think, for a first effort, Chris, as we've talked about separately, I think that it's
Mm-hmm.
admirable, but you could definitely see that mistakes were made in a way.
Yeah, I think you look at the history of it too, and just by what you're describing, this was kind of a salvage product that EA was kind of like, well, shit, we have all these assets, we've built something up, and we got an endorsement from a major name. Let's get something out to market. And like you said, we'll get into it, but with all those considerations, at least that's how it looks, a framework. And I'm not saying that's how it was, but just looking at how it came to be, I think the end result, it could have been much, much worse.
Yeah, this could have been like a worst games of all time candidate, if it had been
It could
released,
have been,
in any other
argue.
circumstance. So the fact that they managed to put out a playable game and a game that, did receive some sort of cult following and it still well regarded, and I still see from time to time people saying, "Hey, Clive Barker's Undying deserves a remake. Someone should do it with like modern conventions and modern graphics and so forth." So it's definitely good that they managed to put something out that doesn't kill your PC, that managed to kind of stand up to the games of the time. You really had to put yourself in the perspective of 2001 to appreciate this game. It's definitely a game that you need to put yourself in that mind frame, because otherwise you're going to struggle through it. But yeah, we can get into that later.
So for personal experiences, I know, Shane, we kind of just rolled over you there and just told you to shut up and sit in a corner for a second, but we'll bring you back into the fold because I think you have the most amount of personal experience with the game. I'll just kind of go first and say I never heard of this game until Shane put it on our list for episodes to do. That's my personal experience with it. This is my first time seeing it, touching it, loading it up ever. Like, I did not even know this game existed until, I don't know, earlier this year. I'm like, what the fuck is this game? And Shane's like, yeah, it's good. Play it. I'm like, okay.
Have you at least seen any like Clive Barker? Like, have you seen Hellraiser, for example? You have any familiarity with him?
This is going to be a shameful admission here. I've never watched a Hellraiser movie.
Oh man. Well, you know what? We're at the perfect time of year for you to do that.
Except I'm not in the perfect place to do that, unfortunately.
What are you talking about? Just like, I mean, it's probably on Netflix or, I don't know, Amazon Prime, or you can find it.
I'll have to look for it.
So I don't know if I have necessarily like a broad, depth of experience with it or anything like that. But I mean, it was one that I played, when it, maybe not immediately when it came out, but right around that time period. It was the early 2000s. I recall this is part of the reason that I added it to our episode list, to get it in for our annual Spooptober, just because I recall liking it quite a bit. I played through it from beginning to end at least 2 or 3 times that I can remember, and I always enjoyed it. I think the biggest thing that drew me to it, perhaps unsurprisingly, is just the atmosphere. Clive Barker is. Turns out he's pretty good at doing that, and that really gets communicated fairly well, I think, in this game. Honestly, it's probably one of its biggest strengths, which we will talk about in a moment. But yeah, I mean, listen, man, it was the early aughts, right? So that was right around the time where, I was perhaps, one might say, at peak edge. And so this was right up my alley, I mean, we're talking about this. We were talking about Alice, which came out right around the same time. So things were just real hot topic-y for a while. You know what I'm saying?
Probably a lot of new metal going on at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd have my Korn CD in my Walkman and also playing this game. If that paints a picture for any of you out there.
Perfectly.
This Linkin Park hoodie.
Yeah. I never had any Linkin Park merch, surprisingly.
Oh.
I had this really sweet long sleeve, like Adidas knockoff, like Korn shirt that I actually kind of wish I still had. I'm not going to lie.
That would be funny.
But yes, so that would be my personal experiences with it. I have very fond memories of it that may or may not still hold up. But yeah, what about you, Ozzy? Like what was your experience with this back in the day?
Unlike you, Shane, I mean, I wasn't a PC gamer back in the day. I also was like 12.
Fair.
So we had like the family PC. We played a lot of The Sims and stuff like that. But I couldn't play like the more graphics intensive games like at the time Undying. So I didn't play this, but I did read a lot about it. I think back in 2000. Which for some reason I always think this game came out in 2000, but then I recall it's because I read the previews in GamePro. If you recall that I was an avid GamePro reader back in the day, I didn't know better, so I had seen screenshots, I had read about it. This is the first like instance where I became aware of who Clive Barker was, and then I think I read some more stuff on the old IGN. I think I saw like a QuickTime video of the trailer.
Oh
the
God,
time.
a QuickTime video. That takes me back.
I'm trying to conjure those images, man.
It's like a postage stamp sized video. Yeah, it's great.
which took like I think like 45 minutes to download, if you recall that, because I was on the 56K line.
And that's sweet 240p.
Oh wow.
But I never played it, and then when Good Old Games released it, I picked it up, and I popped it up, I fired it up because I was always fascinated by it. I think it was the Clive Barker like name ID that really hooked me, and the fact that it didn't seem like a game that looked like other games that were releasing at the time, and so I fired it up, and I played through the first, like, I don't know, hour of the mansion, and I remember having good memories of it, but I didn't keep playing, and so that kind of like sealed, in like stasis, my perception of Undying. And I remember when Chris mentioned that we were going to record this episode, I was like, oh man, you're probably gonna like it. Like it has like a really good atmosphere, like like the mansion in particular, like the estate, like it has all the thunder, and the windows are like with the drapes being flown by the wind, etc. And it just makes a very good first impression. So that was my experience until I came on board this episode, and I decided to finally give it a real earnest go. And I did not finish it, full disclosure, for reasons that I can get into later. But I did get pretty far into it, probably about halfway through the game. So I think I have a sense of what the game is about, and what it holds, and its pros and cons.
All right. Well, there you go. All right. So I guess in lieu of, Chris's more creative segues, because I can't, I'm just going to admit, I just can't live up to those. I don't know how to.
Fine.
I don't know how to do it.
I'll try and power this through.
We could probably move on to talking a little bit about the plot and writing of the game, because I mean, if for nothing else, right, this is something that was backed by an actual author and a movie producer and et cetera, director and what have you. Yeah. So if there's anything that we should be talking about here, I feel like it's the writing. So with that being said, I suppose, Chris, what are your feelings about how this story unfolds?
I think it sets up really nice. Like the writing itself, the way that it establishes what's going on in the beginning of the game, the character motivations for the most part. And other than the fact that somehow your occult fighting main character is a skeptic. I mean, other than that, everything kind of really makes it gels, and it sets you off on an adventure. And it's really well written. It's really well formulated. And as you play the game, and I saw you brought this up in the notes too, Shane, it's just the game wants to tell you everything through notes that you find all over the place. And sometimes this can be a good thing for establishing kind of like back lore or stuff like that. And when we talked about Mist, it was kind of the same way. Like everything you found out about the island of Mist and what was going on there was all through these books that you found in the library.
Right.
So this is just kind of a PC game trope of the time, and it's probably what people were expecting through their games, is the plot and the exposition would be told through these books. And to be fair, like these books are written very well. Gives you a very good idea of what's going on in the game. So the plot itself, the writing itself, I think is good. I think by the time it gets midway through the game, and we'll get more to this in the gameplay, it kind of loses sense of what it's trying to accomplish, and just kind of becomes a meandering mess. But that's not because there was a lack of effort to try it all together. That's more through just kind of what the gameplay does to the plot itself.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And yeah, I mean, I did make a particular note of that, perhaps unsurprisingly, the writing quality, both in the dialogue and in the journal entries that you sort of find strewn about the estate, is exceptionally well done. I mean, like, I felt like, okay, like, full disclosure, and I think this isn't a surprise because, like, I've said this before, especially when we were talking about Mist, and we've probably brought this up on some other occasions, that I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the like find entry logs to determine more exposition sort of thing. I feel like it's lazy in a lot of ways, and a lot of them aren't necessarily written particularly well so that it's really going to keep you engaged, but these do. Like I actually like unironically enjoy reading the journal entries that you come across in this game because they are very well written and they do a good job of, you know, fleshing out the backstory and giving you more of an idea of what led up to, you know, the events that you are, you know, currently experiencing. And so I think that was well done. It wasn't an overplayed trope at the time that this game came out. So, you know, you kind of have to take that into consideration, I think. And also, it's one of the few places that I feel like this is actually thematically accurate. Like we had this discussion about other games, like Doom 3 is a perfect example, right? Where it's just like, who the fuck in like the space future is leaving these text or audio logs behind? Nobody does that now.
Just before they die.
Yeah.
And
no, they do. It's called Twitter.
Okay, yeah. That's a whole other discussion. But nobody even does that today. So it just feels forced. It feels like a game mechanic. And this was in a period, this is set in the 1920s, where folks still did write personal journals quite often. It was a normal thing that a lot of people did. And so that makes sense thematically. And that, I don't know, maybe that makes me a fucking nerd, but like that actually means something to me, that your game mechanic has like an in-universe sensible explanation. And so the whole like journal entry thing, I feel like gets a pass here because of those reasons.
Oh, I can understand that.
I would say it's to me, it was my favorite part of the game. You know, just reading the journal entries. I mean, it did feel like this was Patrick Galloway, who's the lead protagonist, just writing down his impressions and saying, you know, hey, this is what's happening, or this is what I found. Like, I found the Tibetan hand cannon, or the like. I mean, the only thing is that that's where you most keenly feel the disconnect between Patrick, as he's portrayed in the cutscenes as a skeptic, and Patrick, the one in the journal that just picked up like an ectoplasm or something like that, and it's gonna fire like hand bullets, you know, with like magic and stuff. And so there's a really huge disconnect between the journal entries, which my impression is that this game is a game that's constantly struggling with the game that it was supposed to be and the game that Clive Barker eventually ended up like turning it into. Mm-hmm. And so you feel like the journal entries are like Clive Barker just putting down, you know, the universe that he's putting together. Whereas the gameplay is just a team like, hey, like, you know, like we made this game design choice for the character to like throw fucking, you know, like magic bullets from his hands.
Literal skulls.
Yeah. So, and he needs to like wield this scythe and he has like this sixth sense. And so that's where you see like the narrative disconnect most keenly. And in terms of the plot, I mean, I like the plot. I mean, it's one of those things where it's interesting. You know, the main character, Patrick, he's a World War I fighter. He gets summoned by his old like platoon leader, you know, who's Jeremiah Covenant, and he's the last surviving member of the Covenant family. So he goes to Ireland. You know, you learn that he's been banished from Ireland for reasons that are not readily apparent until like much later, and maybe even then it's hard to like figure out because you really have to go into the journal entries to figure it out. But he goes back to Ireland to help his friend because his friend sends him a letter, you know, saying, hey, help me out, like I'm in grave danger.
Wait, they're in Ireland? I thought he was like in the United States or Canada or some shit.
No, man, it's Ireland.
Yeah.
Then why is he the only one with an Irish accent? Irish accent?
A bad one at that.
Yes,
but an Irish.
What?
Accent. Yeah, man, they're in the coast of Ireland. That's the premise.
Mm-hmm.
I completely missed that because I was like, again, this is just blowing my mind. I'm sorry. He has a fucking Irish accent. Nobody else does.
No, not at all.
Nobody.
Everyone else just sounds like standard. I mean, is it British? I mean, I think they have just American.
Well,
like, well, I don't want to say like Northern American. Yeah, like typical like radio maybe? American. Yeah. Mid-Atlantic.
I was going to say it's I can't remember what the actual name for it is, but it's that like Central American, just like neutral accent, I think is generally what most of them have. Except for like the wait staff and like the servants on the grounds, like they all have like varying degrees of British.
Yeah. It's British. Yeah. It's not Irish.
Yeah, like working class British, essentially.
Yeah, essentially, so. Yeah.
But Jeremiah and his family live there.
Yeah, no, they're from there. They hail from
What?
there. That's their family estate. They're Irish, and none of them have an Irish accent.
As it turns out, this is not the only problematic part of the voice acting, but we'll touch on that in a bit.
Wow.
But I mean, and I like the plot. Essentially the family's cursed, but then you realize, and Clive Barker is very honest about this, that this is literally an adaptation of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. And just to give some background, like I read this last night. I read The Fall of the House of Usher. It's one of those Poe stories that I had never gotten around to. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, holy shit, like they literally just lifted everything wholesale. Like the main character in the short story, Roderick Usher, is Jeremiah Covenant. Like Poe describes him, and it's literally the character model for Jeremiah Covenant. And he has a sister who, Madeline Usher, and that's Lisbeth Covenant, which is Jeremiah's sister. And she's also described perfectly. And like her demonic character is the same character that you have like at the end of the story. And it's literally the same. Like guy gets summoned by an old friend by a letter, like saying bad things are happening. Sister like goes, like starts wasting away and then passes away. Literally all down to the same thing. And Clive Barker's very honest about this, because this was one of his favorite stories as a kid. But then it just feels like, okay, so you have this adaptation of Usher, and then it's like, okay, but we need like the rest of the game. And that's where everything goes like off the rails. So yeah.
I wish I was more literate so I could make the comparison. I think like it's not Lisbeth, because Lisbeth's really a minor character. I'd probably say it's more Bethany, if the way you describe it. If his sister's the main antagonist, because he has another sister, Bethany, who is more behind everything.
Well, the thing is, in Usher, I mean, in the short story, there are only two siblings and they're twins, and so I feel like with Undying, they split the sister character into Bethany and Lisbeth. So like some features were put into Lisbeth and some features were put into Bethany. And the other siblings, like Aaron and Ambrose, I mean, they're just like wholesale creations.
Right.
But yeah, and I feel like, again, it's the new things they added that really don't feel like they thematically connect. Like I feel like the best parts about this plot are the ones that were written by Edgar Allan Poe. So so yeah.
Some of the problems I did have with the journals, Shane, even though you give them a pass, and for the most part I do too, and I know as you saying that's your favorite part of the game, is the lack of exposition in the actual like world itself.
Yeah.
Makes some serious problems, or even sometimes the journals just don't really fit in with what's going on. So the first thing I notice is in the first chapter when you're going after Lisbeth in the monastery, I guess the catacombs, all these journals are just in pristine condition from like 600 years ago.
Yeah.
And I like a lot of other games do a really good job of when you find ancient texts, like they're torn and you can't see everything, or they're burnt. And it's like, yeah, this is just some journal I found on the floor of this ancient monastery. And yeah, it's 100% good to go. Just wrap bound, everything. Yeah, it's cool.
And it's in perfect English, even though this is written by folks that probably weren't English to begin with.
Not even Gaelic. It's crazy. It's written in American English. I can't, maybe, I don't know. Then there's some characters that just kind of show up.
Yeah.
Like Otto, I didn't know who the fuck Otto was. Maybe just because I just stopped paying attention to the journals or didn't read them all. And then just Ambrose just kind of shows up out of nowhere. Like you're just going through the game and all of a sudden Ambrose shows up, tries to light you on fire, and then you're fighting him. So there wasn't really any development of Ambrose himself.
And it feels like it's a game that the team, was not completely talking to each other.
No.
Like the gameplay team was not talking to Clive Barker necessarily. Clive Barker was off in England doing his own little thing. And so it feels very disconnected between its disparate parts. And there's an emptiness in the game world. There are very few character interactions. Like Chris, you point out in the notes that like the waitstaff just kind of hangs out there to be killed, and it's like it really feels like the game doesn't really observe this universe, logic, and so that really puts you at a disconnect. It just really breaks the immersion.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that was one of the things like that I 100% agreed with Chris on here. And it's just, it totally pulls you out of things too when you're just wandering around this estate. Right. And like there are literal demons just gallivanting about the grounds and people are just still like dusting fucking furniture. I'm like, what are you doing, woman? Leave. Like, and they're so nonchalant about it too. Like it was right after Jeremiah gets killed, right? And like he is literally beheaded by his undead brother with a scythe. And then, the first thing you see after you have that boss encounter is one of the butlers just like strolls up to you and he's just like, oh, yes, this is most unfortunate about Jeremiah. And I'm like, what?
You have no one to pay you, sir.
Yeah. You have effectively been let go.
Yeah, but this house is sweet. So.
Yeah. Like, I think there was only like one or maybe two interactions with the folks like around the grounds where they were just, the gardener. He was just like, oh, well, fuck this. I'm leaving.
Get the fuck out of here.
And that was it. Everyone else is just totally cool with it.
The gardener respawns, like, depending upon where you are, it's like, okay, now the gardener is here, and then you go somewhere else, and it's like the gardener just respawned elsewhere. It's just there are a lot
that's the twist. The gardener is actually behind everything.
The gardener is behind it all. The gardener in the library with the candlestick.
Yeah, that's right.
There's two gardeners in the beginning, or there's two of them, and one of them you can actually save from one of the little howlers.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was the same one.
No, they have the same character.
Yeah, it's the same model.
Well, there you go. I thought it was the same character.
You can save him from a howler, and then he's just like, he doesn't even thank you.
Yeah.
He just goes back to trimming hedges and shit. And this is like, these howlers just aren't killing them. They're eating them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like right off the get, you're like, oh shit, like this maid just got murdered. Like within the first 5-10 minutes of the game, like she gets eaten by this howler. And then you go into the kitchen. It's like, yeah, I'm just making meals, man.
You don't want to know what's in the pies.
Work is cheap, so,
And this is like, I don't know, man, but this is like the emptiest mansion I've ever seen. I that's another thing that kind of pulls the immersion. Like, I know that this is like early aughts. You couldn't have like very complex geometry, but it just feels so empty. Like everything just feels like you're just going through hallways. And by the way, I mean, we'll get into this later. Like, we're talking just about the mansion, and the mansion is like the first hour and a half. Like, there's an entire rest of the game that doesn't take place in the mansion, and it suffers for it.
Absolutely.
But even the mansion, like, which is the one that's most striking, it just feels empty. It just feels like they couldn't really achieve like their conceptual vision. I don't know. And that just goes along with the waitstaff as well. It's like, what are you dusting, man? I mean, there's like literally no furniture here. So.
I think that does segue great into the gameplay, because you can't talk about the emptiness of the game in and of itself. I can forgive the mansion because it's a big mansion and the dude's living by himself. So maybe the emptiness is supposed to add to the oppressiveness of the atmosphere. I can understand.
The waitstaff is stealing stuff, I guess. They're
exactly. I could see that.
Well, I think they actually they kind of try to explain that away at the beginning with some of the dialogue with the first like maid that you meet or whatever. She's just like, this house is so friggin' big and like we're low on waitstaff, so most of the place is a wreck and no one's touched anything. So just go over here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the reason for that is because Lisbeth had literally just like invaded, like the demons had just like invaded like the house the day earlier, and it was all like a mess, and that's what she was trying to explain.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But to your point, I mean, even if you want to say the mansion is empty, which I can buy wholesale, the rest of this game, and it's mostly because of the pacing, which is just horrible, is empty in the areas outside of the castle. It's just so quiet and empty, and for the most part is extremely bland, but yet at the same time extremely narrow and focused, and tries to drive you in a certain direction for the most part. Like there's times where it's really well executed, but then it just goes into times where it's just like, what does this game expect me and want me to do? And it's just so it feels soulless, but not like in a good kind of soulless, like not demonic, just
not in the spooky kind of way. Yeah.
Not in the spooky kind. Yeah. It's just like, it was just like, we have some models we put up here and we thought they look cool and we want you to run through them.
Well, the thing is I feel like this game really could have benefited from an editorial pass on some of the level design specifically. I think we all probably agree on this based on our notes, but talking about the gameplay, like the intro to this game is pretty strong. Like it, and I mean, to Ozzy's point, like that's basically the only part you played, and then you remembered that forever, which I think was probably the right choice, frankly. But once you get past the initial sort of like introduction to the game, you hit the first like main chunk of it. I guess you could call it a chapter, which is really focused around Lisbeth specifically. And once you hit those catacombs trying to track her down, oh my God, the game it slows to a crawl. It's such a slog. It goes on for far longer than it should. The catacombs, while I understand they're trying to make it like, it's a maze of dark catacombs that you must traverse. Like, I get it. Okay. Like, I get what you're trying to do here. But at the same time, somebody probably should have come in and trimmed some of the fat, because it felt like it went on for far longer than it should have for no discernible reason. And that, I think, coupled with the like complete lack of direction that you tend to get for most of this game, I got lost actually. And I had to look up something, because I actually just straight up missed a key that I needed in order to continue on. And I had no idea what to do or where to go. And it was this one specific thing that you weren't really directed to very well. And, I think it's because we tend to, or at least I guess I do, tend to remember the better parts of games that we played when we were younger. Because these like extended slog sections that this game tends to have, and the Catacombs is not the only one, those left my brain. I totally forgot that was a part of this game at all. To me, this entire game was just like all about the spooky mansion and like the grounds around the estate. And like, that was it. And so I was totally taken aback when it was like, yeah, go fuck off to this completely different area. And then also you're going to go in some watery caves to hunt down some foreigners. And I'm just like, oh, okay, well,
it's a pirate cove.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I was like, I didn't remember any of this.
Well, but Shane, I mean, you point out that lack of direction. I mean, I would say that applies to the game as a whole. Like, the game really feels like it lacks direction. Like, it lacked someone that stepped in and said, this is my vision. This is how we're going to achieve it. And this is how we're going to merge gameplay, story, everything. Like, again, for having Clive Barker in the name, like, I think honestly, this was, like you said, Chris, this was a salvage project, and Clive Barker was like kind of brought in to give his name and also to just like consult on some stuff, because he didn't really, focus on giving directions on how everything was going to merge together. And at least I don't think so. And,
right.
And this was something he corrected, I think, in Clive Barker's Jericho, which was the other game that he worked on.
Mm-hmm.
He said, that basically that's the game that he wanted to do from the ground up. And this game was just kind of like, okay, let me see if I can step in and fix it. But Shane, to your point, I mean, it's not just you. Like, this game has some of the worst level design that I have ever seen. Like, it's not helped by the fact that it's broken out into segments for loading purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, from a technical point of view, the game is like broken out into chunks. And the problem is that it just never feels like an organic, natural space. Like, you never feel like the layout of either the catacombs, the mansion, or whatever it may be, the priory, with the priests and the like. None of that feels like there's an actual, sense to how everything is laid out. It doesn't feel like, it feels like there are just different Legos that never fit together.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, there's a sense of disorientation. And you can only get so far with saying, well, we're trying to give you like that sense of disorientation that Patrick is feeling. It's like, no, like,
no,
you need to give some sense of like place to the player. And the game just like out of nowhere asks you to like, okay, you don't have anything else to do in this segment, and there's a door and it's locked. What do? Oh, actually, you have to go back through this area that you had no idea you had to go back to, and find this very, very minute place in the ground to put a dynamite so that you can go into the catacombs, where we gave you no idea that you had to go to that particular place that was otherwise completely nondescript. Like, that's how this game is designed for the most part.
And they do it again later too, for when you have to go fight Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like this house in the middle of nowhere, and the only way that you can make it past this house is if you use your scry. And we'll get to the scry thing later, and watch a ghost do something on the ground and then walk away. And what you're supposed to do from that inference is you're supposed to put dynamite or use one of your spells to blow up the floor and pick up what they buried. But it doesn't, you use your dynamite so infrequently, and you use destructive environment aspects so infrequently, that I could see people getting completely lost and stuck at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you forget that they exist.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And actually, Ozzy, I just want to kind of expound upon your point because it's an excellent one. And you described exactly how I felt playing through this game again. And that is that there is no sense of place. Like the fact that you never quite get down in your head the layout, the general layout of any environment that you're in, even the mansion. Like in most games, I am able to, after a little while, get a good sense of direction. And I'm like, oh, okay, I remember I need to go down this hallway and take this door to get to the parlor or whatever the hell. At no point in this game was I able to properly navigate to places that I needed to go because there's just a complete lack of distinction. There's no like good landmarks or anything to help guide you. And there is no cohesion to how the levels are laid out. As you mentioned, it is quite literally, it feels like somebody procedurally generated a bunch of level pieces and then stuck them together. And frankly, even games that purposefully do that, it seems like they tend to do a better job than how they laid these out. And so, yeah, so you get stuck feeling like I'm really relying on somebody or something in the game to just explicitly tell me, go here. Because otherwise I have no innate sense of where to travel to. And the game also does not do that well either. And so there are many points in the game, as you both just mentioned, where you end up feeling just totally lost and you have not even a hint of like what it is that the game expects of you next.
Which is why I think, Shane, that, and Chris, you made this point in your notes, that the game locks you out of areas. Because it's like the game designers recognizing, okay, we kind of made like a very nonsensical level design. Or maybe it was another part of the team that looked at the level design and was like, God, this makes no absolute sense at all. and they said, well, in order to like lead the player, we kind of got to lock these doors and make sure that he is taken down and guided down this narrow hallway, which makes you think that you actually have a more expansive playground. But particularly in the mansion, it's like, nope, but this is locked. Nope, but this is locked. And so this is the very narrow way in which we have to take you. And the game kind of works when it's like that, because otherwise the alternative to that is what you find in the later levels, which is like, where the fuck do I go now? Like, what do I have to do here?
Well, even in the earlier levels, it's like haphazard, right? Where like some of the doors will be jammed or stuck, which by the way,
was perfect.
Get used to hearing that for fucking ever while playing this game. But
in a Duke Nukem voice, in a way, I mean, it reminded me of jammed,
bubble gum.
But no, like, so it's not consistent, because sometimes they will do that to try in a very obvious way to like sort of herd you down a specific path, but then some doors are still left open that lead to places that you don't need to go. So like you still end up getting lost, because if you don't know which direction you're supposed to go, which as we've said is very hard to discern, leaving some of those paths open and not just railroading you to the next destination doesn't do anything. It's not like you're rewarded for exploration, really. All you're doing is just aimlessly wandering.
There aren't even like additional journal entries like you can get from like exploring. No. Like all the journal entries are kind of like on your main pathway.
There are some that you can get later, but that does enforce the exploration part. It's just that the exploration is so shitty because, like, okay, this game is a first-person shooter, and we'll get into the shooter eventually. But a lot of these exploration it wants you to do is through shitty platforming.
Oh God, what was in the water at the time with shitty platforming and first-person shooters, man?
I don't know.
I blame Half-Life for that, honestly.
I don't know. I mean, it's so bad.
Yeah, probably. But Turok did it like in 1996, man. Come on.
True. Actually, that's true. That's a good point.
This shitty platforming was just all over. Thankfully, I don't remember GoldenEye doing it too much. I think that's why it's, people love it so much. But like I remember parts of the game where you have to find specific items, and it's like locked behind platforming. And even just getting out of areas. I remember, I guess, the priory or the monastery, whatever you want to call it, Like, to get out of that area, you have to do some platforming that the game has never really explicitly told you had to do before.
Oh my God, the window?
Yes.
The window?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude. Yes, that pissed me off so much because I wandered that entire like monastery trying to figure out where the fuck I was supposed to go. And then I go look up a walkthrough and it's like, yeah, just use the dude's body as a platform and jump out the window. I'm like, who would have thought of that?
Oh, and then it wants you to jump on a tiny rail to get onto a roof to navigate ways that you're supposed. It never wants you to do this or expects you to.
Like that kind of a pathway would be something that you would do to find like a secret.
Yes.
In any
There's
other
no
game.
signposting.
Yeah. And in this, that was the main path to progress the story. I was like, what the fuck?
And Shane, I mean, I feel like you just described, like, I try to play these games on like Sundays, and it's like I said, I have very limited time. And then when I would spend like 30 minutes just trying to figure out what the fuck I was doing in Undying, I was like, God, so little time and I'm playing this fucking game. Like, and I don't know what the fuck to do.
But briefly getting back to the point about exploration, like if you don't explore, the game punishes you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not it rewards you for exploring. It punishes you if you don't explore it the way it wants you to. Because if you don't explore the way it wants you to, you don't get those power amplifiers, which are key to upgrading your spells.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you don't upgrade your spells, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And you think, well, if I miss it, I just can go back and get it. No,
You can't.
Because if you go too far, it will lock you out immediately from going back into the previous area.
And again, that's just a matter of inconsistency because they expect you to explore the levels fully to find these hidden items that are actually quite important, but then also will present level layouts that kind of discourage exploration because then you just end up wandering around doing nothing productive. Like it's this weird like in between.
Do you feel like, you know, based on its original, like you were supposed to be like the superhuman type character, do you feel like this was originally like more of a Doom type shooter where you had all these powers and you had this whole big arsenal and you were able to just use it? And now with this change in like narrative and thematic scope, it's just kind of like you have all these powers that feel ancillary. Like they feel like they're all like, you know, appendices, you know, they're not really used. Like, for example, the incantation that gets rid of like spells and whatever, like you never really use that. The ether
Dispel,
traps,
yeah.
like you barely use it. I mean, you use it once to like take out Aaron, but there's just a bunch of stuff in this game that feels like, okay, we put this in here, but we don't know how to use it. So just, you know, it's there just in case.
Well, because item management sucks too.
It's
So I had to
horrible.
keep pressing F to scroll through items, which is it's inconvenient because the text is tiny as fuck.
Yep.
And it takes a long time to do it. Same with weapons and spells. I think that's where we can kind of get into the shooting aspect about it, like being a first person shooter.
Well, before we move on to that, I just wanted to touch on what Ozzy's talking about with like the spells and weapons and things, because that it's the same exact issue that I had with Alice. And I don't know if this was just a coincidence or if there was some like weird game design decisions that were made in the early 2000s. I don't know, but it's the same exact problem, which is they had a lot of neat ideas for weapons and abilities. But functionally speaking, you only use maybe 2 or 3. Like if we're talking about the spells that you learn as you go along, I don't know about the two of you, but for me, I used almost nothing except for obviously the scry, because that's like required for most of the game. And then I maxed out shield because that's basically an I win button because you just have that up all the time. It costs almost no mana to cast and it keeps you, you know, immune to damage as long as you keep casting it. And occasionally the ectoplasm, but that was just sort of like a nice addition to, you know, your firearms. And that was really it. Like I didn't really use anything else unless the game specifically wanted me to. Like when you first get haste, they're just like, hey, you got that spell now. Here's some cliffs that you need to jump on that you totally need to use haste for.
Here's some shitty platforming.
And then that was like pretty much it. And it's a bummer too, because same as I mentioned in our Alice episode, I think there were some pretty creative ideas that went into some of this stuff, but there's just no practical use for them.
Yeah, I mean, and for my part, I mean, you said inventory management. You had to basically manage 3 inventories. You have to manage your weapons, which you scroll through the weapon wheel with the middle wheel. and you have to manage your spells, and you have to manage the rest of your inventory, which, by the way, your inventory is tied to your health. Different bullet types, which make no fucking point whatsoever, basically with the small font that Chris just mentioned. And I just use ectoplasm. Basically, I just use ectoplasm because, in order to change to scry, like, you had to use like either 3 or 4, like the keys. And it's not intuitive. And so if you get attacked by a howler in the middle of it all, since I was using ectoplasm, like, you had to like quickly switch, from scry or whatever other spell you were using. And so like again, I mean, it feels like just because you have all these keys on the keyboard doesn't mean that you should use them all. And it just feels like you're constantly juggling and trying to remember, okay, is it F? Is it, Q in order to, press on the health? It's just all over the place. And, this is a game, for example, that, would benefit from, if you have health, it would just automatically use it for you, and so that you don't have to like, try to like scroll through everything to find the health and press Q in order to, get, health. It's just the inventory management in this game is absolutely horrid. But again, I mean, I hate that this is turning into a hate fest, but.
Well, I think they're legitimate points, though.
Yeah. I'll say something positive, though. I mean, it's not necessarily the game's fault, because think about it. Halo came out in earlier that year, I think, or just before this game. Did it come out like January of 2001? I can't remember, but it was around that time, right? All apologies to Halo, because I think I kind of crapped on that game. I'm now seeing exactly what Halo did, because Halo was one of the first games I remember where you can only carry 2 weapons at a time, and it was just shooting. For a first-person shooter, it had your, recoverable shield, and you picked up health on the ground. And I looked at that as old hat. But now when you play this game and you compare it to other games like Alice, and we compare it to games like Quake, and you look at, other first-person shooters of the era, you can tell just how much Halo was evolving first-person shooters. Combat evolved. I guess it's appropriate.
Would you say it evolved combat, Chris?
Yes. Okay. I look at that, and I look at a game like Undying, and Undying seems like it's just trapped in an era where it was just kind of living up to the status quo. You could tell this game started development in 1999 because it feels like a game that was made in 1999.
It feels like a 99 game. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I was thinking about this last night as I lay to sleep, actually. I've been thinking a lot about this game, weirdly enough, as I go to sleep. Maybe it's because of my anxiety of coming on the episode and trying to contribute. But I've been thinking a lot about it. And it's like, yeah, it does feel like a 99 game. Like, it doesn't feel like a 2001 game at all. And even Halo, I mean, Halo has its languid pacing in the middle sections and the like, but but it's nothing like this. Like, the game never really breaks into something else. It's just kind of like a straight corridor and just like a monster closet. Like, literally, there's one point where there's literally a monster in a closet. And it just like keeps pumping out. And the enemy variety is a big issue. Like, most of the time you're just getting howlers, and it feels like they're endlessly respawning.
That's because they actually are in some spots. If you don't progress to like get to the next little like story blip or like that finding a scry point or whatever, they will just keep throwing them at you. I actually tested that on purpose in a specific area, and I would stand in a hallway.
Catacombs, I imagine.
Well,
yeah, it's the catacombs.
Well, there is that, but my particular spot was the present day monastery before you go back in time. And there was one like hallway that led up to a staircase to where you would see a scry point to get like a key and a book or something. And I just stood there, and howlers just kept pouring down the hallway for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I must have killed like 15 at one point in the catacombs. Yeah. And then I realized, okay, yeah, they must be endlessly respawning. And it's just, and it's the thing about it is that I wouldn't mind it if they had a little bit more variety in their attack patterns, but they literally all follow the same attack pattern. They get close to you, and then they jump at you. And that's for every single encounter with a howler is going to be like that.
Also, just as we're talking about that, by the way, I just want to point out that I really hate the fact that most of the AI in this game, including the howler jumps, unfairly anticipate where you're moving.
Yeah.
And will like jump to where you're going.
They will track you.
Yeah.
They will track you.
Oh my God.
I will say, okay, because we're shitting on this game too much. The gunplay is
we're really not selling it.
The gunplay itself is pretty good. I will say, like, once you find your ideal setup, your ideal combination for what weapon you want to use and what spell you want to use, killing things is pretty seamless. I mean, it takes away from the whole entire horror element because, I mean, I played it on easy, so I can imagine on normal is probably a little bit different. But playing it on easy, most enemy types go down in one hit once you know what you're supposed to do and how to take them out efficiently.
Yeah, no, man. It's not on normal. It's not like that. It's not like that. And the problem is with the howlers, like the enemy rig is too thin. It's too small to adequately target. And so that's why I never used any of the actual weapons like the handgun. I mean, I use the handgun every so often, but I couldn't use the shotgun because it's only 2 bullets. And they need to go down with more than 2 bullets. And usually you're missing. And so then you have to go through at least a 3-second reload animation where you're trying to avoid and dodge the howlers. And usually you have at least 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. So what I did is I just did a combination of the Tibetan hand cannon, which kind of freezes the enemies or at least, slows them down, and the ectoplasm. And it would just turn into, like, if you would hear me clicking, it would just be like a mad clicking of like just throwing ectoplasm everywhere.
But you can hold it down.
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
No, but if you hold it down, I mean, doesn't that just charge it up?
No. For the Tibetan hand cannon, it charges it up, but even that has a brief loading time. But for your ectoplasm, you can hold it down and actually waste less mana and fires quicker.
I did not realize that, but it would turn into and the ectoplasm is so loose. And I feel like that's a recognition of the fact that it's not easy to target in this game. It's really hard. And so the ectoplasm is just very loose. It just targets the general area and that's it. You're good. So what I did was I just maxed out my ectoplasm and I would spam the ectoplasm left and right. That's all I did. So I don't know. I mean, it sounds like Shane, you didn't use the ectoplasm that much. So
I really didn't. My tactic was totally different. Like I said, I basically immediately maxed out shield and had it up 100% of the time, and then just went around with the pistol.
But you don't get shield until halfway through the game.
That's a thing, yeah.
Well, yeah, I know. But I mean, I also didn't really need it before that, honestly. And then for the rest of the game,
were you on easy as well?
Yes, yeah, no, because I remember.
I'm the only sucker.
No, I remember how this game went, and I was just like, no, I'm playing this on easy. I don't want to do that to myself. But no, yeah, that was my tactic because you're right. The shotgun. Listen, man, shotguns in FPSs should be awesome. That's like a sacrosanct video game rule. That shotguns need to be cool and effective. And unfortunately, it is not here. It's woefully underpowered for what it should be because Ozzy, you're right on the mark that I would try to use the shotgun. But given that it's, a double barrel and you have to reload after 2 shots and it just doesn't do enough damage, even at point blank range to most things, all that's doing is just opening you up to those tracked attacks that they like to do. And so actually just using the pistol, if you're going to use a firearm, is, I think, more effective because at least then you can fire off more shots.
And it can hit enemies in the distance.
But then you have limited ammo, and that's the problem. Like on normal, they don't go down as easily. And so you need to shoot them 4 times. Like if you shoot them in the head, directly in the head, they may go down with 1 shot. That's fine, but it's hard to get it because the head is this tiny pixel, essentially that you have to hunt.
Really small hitbox.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a very small hitbox, and we haven't even talked about the fucking skeletons, man.
The skeletons,
the fucking skeletons. I mean, they track you with the fucking arrows that they shoot at you, or the spears, and they don't die unless you have the scythe, which only comes more than halfway through the game.
Yeah, fun fact about that, by the way, they also don't stay down permanently even with the scythe. The only way to truly put them down is to use
incantation.
The spell. Yep. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, and that seems like it's a broken thing. The incantation spell is basically meant to resuscitate, the enemy so that it fights on your side. But the problem is the enemies disappear within 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, they don't really do much once so it's you have to scroll through the spells. You have to change your spells to get the incantation spell to try to get it within the 10 seconds that you have to put the spell on this enemy, managing to get the hitbox just right in order to, race it back so that it nominally fights for you. It's just bullshit.
Also, fun fact about that one, by the way, if you accidentally hit an enemy that you've enchanted or whatever with your incantation to fight for you, they will get knocked out of it and just attack you again.
So it's a broken game. Is that what you're telling me, Shane?
By the way, the scythe itself, I love the scythe.
Yeah.
I thought the scythe is a really good weapon. In fact, it's overpowered, and at least in easy mode. But to your point about the skeletons, first of all, fuck the skeletons. I didn't even fight them in one part of the game. I don't think you're supposed
I would just
to.
run through them. I would just fuck it. Yeah.
I would say, you mean that like pitch black pit that there's just like 12 of them in?
Yeah.
That they keep like respawning in. But like one of the things I noticed, and if you can, you're going to have to speak to this on normal, because in easy mode, there would be health packs everywhere. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if there's as many health packs here as there are in normal, or at least a comparable level, I think this is in a way the developers admitting that the enemy balance and enemy combat is a little screwed up because you're going to be taking way too much damage.
There are quite a few on normal, but I did have to reload a lot, just because I mean, there were points where I had no health pack whatsoever, and I was just relying on like 40% of health. So I feel like I would have had more quote unquote fun if I had put this on easy. But on normal, it's just the hitboxes are too small. The enemies are bullet sponges. There's not enough ammo. There's not enough health. So it's just the game design is just very poor ultimately. Again, I hate to put all these bad things into perspective. I don't want to hate on this game because, again, I mean, I think the atmosphere is good. A lot of the times it's a good atmosphere. It's just going to that point as well, though. I mean, there's only so many times that you can have a howler spawn behind you, and there's only so many times that you can hear the same howler noise before you're like, okay, let me look back because there might be a howler behind me. And it's just that the game runs out of its bag of tricks. Like there's just a few tricks that it has, and it just keeps using it over and over again, which again is why the pacing feels so off. I think it's one of the big reasons why the pacing feels so off.
Yeah. And the entire gimmick with the scry too, because we didn't talk about the scry, because the scry like shows hidden plot elements that you're supposed to pick up through the game, like give some backstory. Most of it's just worthless trash and doesn't make me want to use it, especially if you increase the gamma. The scry, which seems to be the main crux of this game, it's his inherent ability. It pretty much goes to the wayside unless you get into a situation where you absolutely need it.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time you put scry, it's just like, okay, I'm seeing this character models walk around the abbey, and that's
it's terrible.
And it's only like for 15 seconds. It's just like, okay, I just saw like monks move.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make any logical plot sense, and that's the thing. I mean, I wish that this game would have had more like interaction with characters. I wish that this game would have been more than just like you're in a corridor and you're shooting monsters in a closet. Like that's it.
Yeah.
Like the game would have been benefited from just having more plot development, having more character development, making some sort of cohesion out of your main character who is completely incoherent. I mean, like he doesn't even point out, like he doesn't even acknowledge that, okay, I just like was lifted up in the air by magic and I just gained like superhuman abilities. Like it's just like,
must be science.
It's like, nope, I'm still a skeptic, So.
No, I think before we probably move on to the next topic here, I think the scry thing is just another case of, unfortunately, a wasted opportunity, because it could have been really cool. And there are some points where it is. Like when you're in the mansion, and again, I feel like by and large, the mansion itself is probably the best environment in the game. There are some spots where it's not told to you and it's not even necessary for you to use scry. But if you do, you'll find some like cool little like creepy flavor things. Like there are certain paintings in the mansion that if you use scry, when you look at them, they change and they get all like super creepy looking and stuff. And like, that's cool.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. Like that, there should have been more of that. Like that, using that ability to like see, sight beyond sight and like looking past the veil or whatever you want to call it. That should have been implemented more, because that was a really cool use of that ability.
Shane, you should have done the voice acting for this game. I really think that you...
Yes, Shane.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a missed opportunity. They should have contacted Shane Koski.
I mean, you know what? If teenage me would have totally been open for that, I'm sure.
Speaking of which, we can go into the sound and talk a little bit about the voice acting, which we've kind of already alluded to.
Yeah.
So Shane, how about you take this one?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so the music, first of all, the soundtrack is pretty solid. It's not anything stellar. I don't think it like is a standout necessarily, but it does what it needs to do. I think it sets the tone and the ambiance pretty well. And also this is something that I've mentioned in other episodes, and I will continue to do so because I think it's important, particularly in thriller / horror pieces like this, and that is the effective use of silence. I actually think that this game does that very well. It's not, super in your face and just like, doing a blah thing every time something happens.
Yeah.
And so actually the music itself is rather sparse, and I think that's very intentional. So that helps to build the tension, which is great. So kudos to them on that one. I will say, if we're kind of segueing into talking more about the voice acting as part of the sound design and what have you, I feel like maybe Chris feels better about this than I do, because I forgot apparently how not good most of the voice acting in this game is. Lisbeth is a particular standout in being a total fucking cringe lord. All of her lines are delivered like she is, an actor in a haunted house somewhere.
Like
it's
a banshee,
just
supposed to be a banshee of some sorts, and
right.
Yeah.
And it's just, all of her lines are delivered so like ham-fistedly that I could not take it seriously.
Well, same with Aaron.
Yeah, it's like Saturday morning cartoon villain level of just like cheese, and I
love it.
And it goes again to the break in the narrative and the gameplay, because when you read about Lisbeth in the journal entries, it feels like she's kind of this melancholic figure that just kind of wasted away over time, and then when you see her, she's just like this, I don't know, like annoying, obnoxious, like taunting you, like, oh my God, whatever.
She's Rita Repulsa. That's exactly what she is. Like, she'll just show up in the catacombs and be like, you'll never find me. And then runs away. And I'm like, what the fuck just happened?
She thinks of herself as dark and mysterious, but in actuality, she is Rita Repulsa.
Also, do you know if you guys have any Irish listeners? Because I don't know, I found Patrick pretty bad.
Yeah, if you are Irish, we want to know how bad Patrick is. And don't go and play it. Just find it on YouTube and let us know how bad his accent is. We want to know.
I had to look for the voice actor because I was like, is this guy actually like, he has to be American. And yeah, it's like this guy from LA that just had like 5 or 6 roles. So they just like dropped this guy from an agency, and it's like, oh man, this is my really big gig. And he just, like looked at the Lucky Charms commercials, and I was like, okay, this is good. I'm fine with this.
It could be worse. It could be worse. Like Crazy Taxi.
Oh, man. Yeah. No, but I mean, so by and large, I actually found that somehow I feel like the wait staff and the servants around the grounds actually had some of the best voice acting. And that like one salty sea captain guy at the lighthouse. I think that was probably it. Yeah. Even the main character, as we were just saying, it kind of ranges from like passable to like very, very stilted, and it's not consistent, much like the rest of the game. But no, I mean, the soundtrack, like I said, is probably the highlight here. I mean, the sound design, for the record, is actually really good. I know, Chris, you're probably going to talk about this a little bit more in a second, especially playing this with like, surround sound headphones on or something. They did a pretty good job with that. A lot of the atmospheric noise and sound effects and stuff are done very well.
Okay, so I'm going to get into this, and I'm just going to say this. You can shit on the voice acting all you want to.
Yep.
But remember, this was 2001.
Yeah.
And up until this point, the standout for voice acting in survival horror games was Resident Evil and Silent Hill.
Yeah.
So go ahead and shit on this voice acting all you want
you're trying to make.
Just go for it. Just say how bad this is, and then go play those games and be like, oh, yeah, still bad. Okay.
Jill sandwiches.
But you would think, with a team that was put together by Steven Spielberg, I mean, like, you would think that there would be...
It wasn't, but like it'd been so long. I wouldn't call this Steven Spielberg's team. And even by that point, I mean, this was right around the time that you could say video games were being accepted as mainstream. So just trying to put a quality product out there for someone who wasn't an edgelord teenager was something that was beyond their scope. They were still trying to appeal to 15 and 16-year-olds.
Yeah. People
like me, you, and Shane. I mean, I know you're 12 at the time, but still same age range, right? So they're not going to try to put a Hollywood level of effort into making sure the voice acting is good. That being said, I think it was really good for a 2000-2001 title. I think it could have been much, much worse. And we saw that in almost every other survival horror game of the era. So like good on them. I do like cheesiness in my survival horrors. I appreciate it as long as you get everything else right. I really think they did. In terms of sound design, obviously, not gameplay.
I just don't think that fits here, though. I just don't feel like it fits because everything else about this game is played straight, right? Like everything is communicated in a way that like they're trying to say like, this is supposed to be scary. This is supposed to be spooky. You are supposed to be unnerved by this.
It worked in Silent Hill too.
I guess. I don't know. I just don't feel like the cheese fits here, but
it's not overly cheesy, but it's mildly cheesy. It's mild cheddar.
In Silent Hill 2, I think that part of the appeal of it is that the voice acting was so off that it added to the weird Twin Peaks type of feeling.
Yes,
sure.
You know,
exactly.
that something was off with all those characters. Like you couldn't trust them. But to your point, Chris, I mean, I do think that it could have been a whole lot worse. Like, it's not the worst voice acting I've heard. There's an issue, as Shane mentioned, with immersion, and it doesn't feel like it fits. But then again, that's everything with this game feels like that. You know, it just feels like a bunch of disparate parts were put together, and they had to cobble together a game that just had to be out for release because EA had spent too much money on it by this point. Because it was in development for like 3 years, and it just didn't make sense to keep pumping money into it.
Which is a long time back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of the other sound design, like I was playing this with headphones and, you know, I don't know, they're definitely not stereo headphones, but I always knew where, you know, the howlers were or an enemy was based off the sound design. Stereo works fine. This is the way you should be playing this game anyway, just for the additional ambiance and just be a little bit more spooky. And that's the thing, when the sound design is on point, when the pacing is doing what it's supposed to do, it generally does have some spooky vibes to it. It sent little chills down my spine, and not just the beginning of the game, but much later in the game when the pacing kind of picks up and gets better again. So because of that sound design, I would say the sound design is actually my favorite part of this game, the standout for the game. And I think it actually overall saves it in an otherwise game that would have been completely forgettable.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. The sound design, I mean, I wish that there was more variety in the sounds. I wish that I would hear more than that one howler sound that keeps coming back.
Yeah.
But you know, in terms of stereo surround, I mean, it does feel like you're hearing where things are coming from. I also played it with headphones, and it does do a good job of identifying where things are coming from. So I think in that point, I mean, I would take that as a W in this game's favor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's especially creepy when they want you to look around with your scry. I love it.
Yeah.
See. Yep. See. I'm all about it. Well, we did skip the graphics. We normally do the graphics before the sound, but that's my fault.
Sure.
So
They're fine. They're fine.
We can talk about that.
I mean, we could probably cover that pretty quickly, I think, right?
I think so.
I think Chris has a more positive opinion about this again.
Yep.
They feel kind of average. I mean, as someone who played a lot of PC games in this era, I kind of feel like they're very middle of the road. Like they nailed the atmosphere, which again, I think is really, in my opinion, I think that's actually the strongest suit of this game, just across the board, is the fact that they managed to really get the atmosphere of it down from all aspects. And this also applies here with the graphics, which ultimately I think is probably one of the more important things. But especially having just played another like 2001 game in Alice, comparing the two, the actual textures and models here are, I feel like, almost objectively worse.
I would agree with that.
It's particularly evident when you have like a lot of the close-ups in the cutscenes on the characters. Like the model textures are super, super blurry, and some are far more egregious than others. Again, I know we're talking about the year 2000, so, you know, proper lip syncing to voice acting and that stuff wasn't quite there yet. And so it's not unique to this game by any stretch of the imagination, but it's kind of hard to look at now where like people's mouths and faces contort in these weird ways to try to simulate talking, and some of the movements that character models make are like not wholly unnatural, and like not in the supernatural kind of way, in the like we're trying to make this move like a person to the best of our ability, and, you know, haven't quite gotten there yet. Like there's no mocap in this for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I felt very middle of the road about the graphics. Oh, and one of the things that I pointed out as a strong suit in Alice, which was their excellent use of skyboxes, is not present here at all. Like, it's very obvious that you are inside of a geometrical shape with some clouds painted on it.
I agree.
Basically, in every single level that you're in.
Yeah, and if you go to some places, like, you could literally see, like, if it was a matte painting, you could see, and this is more noticeable, I guess, nowadays with like HD monitors, etc., and you're running at a max resolution. But if you go to like the Edge, you could see like the actual, like, you know, just painting. It's just like a picture that they put there, and it's very blurry, and it's meant to look like this far away place that you know, it's part of this Irish countryside. But it doesn't really, I mean, it really breaks you out. But again, I mean, this might be just because we're running this at max resolution 20 years later.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I mean, I feel like the graphics are fine. I mean, I feel like it does feel like a 1999 game. And I feel like it's similar to other games that it came out around that particular 1999 period, like Half-Life, you know, but even Half-Life had like more geometric variation. Like, it did feel like the world was more populated, and that came out in 1998. So I wouldn't just say that this game gets a pass just because it's 2001, and particularly with something like Halo that was already in development by this point since 1999 as well. You know, you look at Halo and it's like, oof, like, it just feels like a different generation. Like, it literally feels like this game was a generation behind when it came out.
I would tend to agree with both of you. I do think it's a standout because it hasn't aged as poorly as a lot of games from that era. I think the atmosphere helps it out a lot. I think the fact that it's not very populated helps it, at least on my experience, run very smoothly. I think you make a fantastic point. We're playing this in up-resed, and so a lot of these textures weren't designed for our 1080p screens. They were designed for probably like 480i or 480p, whatever the case might be, for a VGA connection back in 2001. So yeah, when you get close to a lot of these textures, specifically doors, you can tell it's blurry, and it's probably not intended to look like that, or a lot of the paintings. And I can understand that. But in terms of when I kind of look at it, 2001, I think middle of the road is perfectly acceptable for a game that's budget was probably middle of the road as well. I don't think EA gave this team a lot to work with, and I think they made the most of it. And the fact I can go at it, I can look at it and not just vomit all over the place is a testament to a team that probably did the best with the resources that they could have. Again, this was a virgin effort for a lot of these people.
Yeah.
Taking that to consideration, I think that the graphics are actually, all things considered. Again, if you're from an outsider and you don't know all these things, yeah, I mean, it's strictly middle of the road. It's not an outstanding point at all. But all things considered, yeah, this is really good, especially with some of the creature models. Now, some like the Howlers look like ass, and there's these snake monsters, and when they die, it's funny as fuck because they just kind of shrivel up into a polygonal like catastrophe. I think like the character animations themselves aren't that bad. I think they hold up to the test of time for the most part. And I think when like these Cthulhu monsters, these annoying fucking Cthulhu monsters who throw bombs at you later in the game, I think they actually did a really good job with that. Now, like the final like boss character models, they're pretty jank. They're pretty polygonal and bad. But the other general monster designs are pretty good for the most part.
I also love, Chris, how they have this animation when you're killed, and the Howlers just like get into position, like you know that you just died, and so you're kind of like in a daze, and then the Howlers get in position in front of you, and then they like take off your head or something like that, or like
the death animations are cool.
Yeah, I
agree. Yeah,
they're cool. It's funny how they just like get in position. It's like, okay, here's my here's my point. Here's my mark. Okay, all right, now take off your head. Take off your head. Yeah,
I think for the graphics too, and I think Ozzy brought this up earlier in the episode, is I feel like if you didn't have a top of the line computer, you could have played this game back in 2001, which is something you couldn't say for a Halo, which is something you certainly couldn't say for a Crysis. If Crysis was out around this time, I don't know. EA was doing that. It had a varied level of games, varied levels of games that you could play, even if you didn't have a top level rig. And this is one of those games. You had The Sims that anyone could play. You had this game for someone who might have that entry level computer with a basic graphics card. And I think, that's something that needs to be said, because not everyone can afford especially back then, like a $2,500 computer. so you could play Halo. It wasn't. It's not that feasible now. It certainly wasn't that feasible then.
Maybe that's part of the reason why it has a cult appeal, Chris. I mean, maybe it's because more people were able to play it because of that.
Well, certainly not by the sales numbers.
Well, I mean, they pirated it most likely. So,
Oh, probably, yeah.
I mean, they had some LimeWire or something like that, running. That's probably why. I mean, like, you could actually play this game back in the day. I don't know because I didn't run it. I never ran it, but it is a good point, Chris, and it's probably a point in its favor as well. Like, it could probably run with a decent medium-sized rig back then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So I guess we didn't have a lot of miscellaneous stuff to touch on here, but there was one thing I guess I wanted to point out, just as like a little bit of flavor, I suppose. So in the brief history, we had brought up the fact that the main protagonist was originally supposed to be basically like a superhuman with supernatural abilities and what have you. Evidently, his name was going to be Count Magnus Wolfram, which is it's a strong name. I like it.
Fucking love it.
But of course, Barker himself kind of rejected that idea because he wanted the protagonist to be somebody that would be much more relatable. And so that's how we got, Patrick Galloway. Just the interesting fun tidbit here, though, is that the character model for Count Magnus Wolfram is actually still in the game. The Sranti shaman that you see at the beginning who attacks Galloway, like in your sort of like flashback cutscene with the Gelzibar stone, that is actually Count Magnus Wolfram's character model. So
yeah, I mean, I do feel, Shane, like going back to this original history. I mean, Clive Barker was the one that moved it to Ireland, so maybe that's the reason why, Chris, like the dialects are completely inconsistent because this was a late addition. Right. But I do want to know. I mean, I would love for someone to like ask Steven Spielberg, like in a Q&A or something. It's like, Steven, we know that you worked on Clive like Barker's Undying way back when, and I would love for him to respond if he actually remembers at all, because it feels like this game was supposed to be like an Indiana Jones type of game with like the superpowers, and this was like an occult kind of figure, like hunting for the occult and stuff like that in an Indiana Jones sense, and it was meant to be a franchise, and it just, when all the changes were made to it, it just couldn't carry that weight. And all that baggage just stayed in many ways when the scope of the game changed. So I would love to ask Steven Spielberg, like, what was your original vision for this game? What did you originally want to achieve with it? And I'm pretty sure he's going to be like, I don't even remember that game. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's going to be like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
And I would tend to disagree with the voice direction being something that happened before Clive Barker got there, considering that Clive Barker was one of the voice actors for the characters.
Yeah, he was for Ambrose, yeah.
Yeah, he was Ambrose.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that he was, that this was done before. I'm saying that maybe it contributes to the inconsistency in
oh, I'm sure.
And who was supposed to be Irish or not. And the only Irish accent is Patrick's, even though they're all in Ireland.
Right.
And a horrible Irish accent at that, we think. If you're Irish and we're wrong, and he does a fantastic job.
But he does have a lucky charm on him, so.
And it's green.
And it is green.
It's terrible. All right. Well, I suppose we probably ought to start wrapping up with our thoughts about whether or not this game still holds up today. So, you know what? I think let's start with Chris. We'll end with our esteemed guest. So, Chris, what are your thoughts? You still think people should play this today in 2021?
When before recording this episode, I was going to give it a soft no, just because I said if you like these older FPSs, you might enjoy this. But after discussing it a little bit more and getting into the nitty gritty, I have to give this a hard pass. It's not worth going back to. That doesn't mean there aren't some parts that you see what this game is supposed to be and what it could have been. Like in particular, the opening is really strong. When this game wants to funnel you in a certain way and go in a certain direction, it shows its strengths. And that was at the beginning, really directing the player and where it wanted you to go and kind of hand holding you along at a frantic, frenetic pace. And then you get that again later in the game on the way to, I think, fighting Aaron, when you're running through the corridors of the mansion. And when it does that, it does a really good job. But the problem is it doesn't do it nearly often enough. And out of the 6.5 to 8 hours that you'll be playing this game, about 6 of those, you'll be wondering, why the hell am I playing this game? So no, this game has not held up.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and take it next. So I kind of feel like I almost wish I hadn't suggested this game for an episode. Because going back to it now, 20 some odd years later, I feel like it's kind of ruined it for me a little bit. And that doesn't always happen. I feel like there are some games we've talked about that have been, near and dear to me when I was younger that we can go back to and be like, yeah, it's got some warts, but it's still pretty good. Still pretty good. It's mostly how I remembered it. This is not one of those games. So the story is good, which again, as I said, probably should not be surprising given who was involved. The atmosphere, when it does things right, is proper spooky. It does what it needs to do. But I feel like that, which was really the standout piece of this game, is just constantly held back by some very inscrutable game design decisions, most notably just the absolutely horrid pacing, which we've covered at length now. I'm honestly not really sure if I would recommend it today, particularly because there are so many just superior alternatives, even in just the somewhat narrow niche of horror FPS. Like Fear immediately comes to mind. That is, now granted, of course it came out later, but that is a superior horror FPS in just about every conceivable way. And so I feel like if somebody had just done a supercut, and also if anybody's listening to this that has the time and the acumen to do it, please go ahead, because I'd love to see it. But if you just did a supercut of all of the cutscenes and some of the more salient gameplay points, some of the better moments of the gameplay, and just put that together in a nice little, cinematic package and throw that on YouTube, that would be the best way to experience this game, because then you get all of the best parts, which is the story, the plot, and the overall atmosphere, without having to actually play the game. So Ozzy, how do you feel? We'll wrap this up with your thoughts.
I mean, there's not a lot that I can add to what you and Chris have said. I mean, no. I mean, I remember messaging Chris, and I really was excited to get going with this game. And I was like, yeah, man, I made some headway. And then I just hit a wall, and I was like, at some point I kept trying to push through, and then I was like, I can't do it. I can't keep playing this game. I'm having a horrible time, and I'm horribly anxious that I need to finish this just to say that I finished Undying. So, I pretty much came into this, with virgin eyes, not because I hadn't known about the game, I knew about it, but I was really kind of going into it, expecting whatever. And I just couldn't do it, man. I mean, there's just the design decisions, if you can call them that, are just so baffling, and the game is just so poorly directed, so poorly paced, that it's just hard. And as you guys were talking, I was thinking, would this game benefit from a remake? And I know that a lot of people talk about doing a remake. I mean, maybe if Clive Barker was able to control the whole thing and was able to lay out a vision, and based on what he already learned from Clive Barker's Jericho and the maybe. But the game has so much baggage from the remainder of what the game was supposed to be, that if they were to do a remake, it would just be an entirely different game. Mm-hmm. And it's just is it even worth it at that point? At that point, just make something new. Maybe do an adaptation of The Fall of the House of Usher. Maybe take that inspiration and do something else with it. I mean, it is in the public domain, so just fuck it, use that. But I don't think that even with a remake, I think this game would benefit from it. I mean, they would just have to redesign the levels completely. They would have to strip away some of the powers. Again, it would just end up being an entirely different game. So no, I wouldn't. I mean, look, this game goes on GOG for Good Old Games for $150. I think that's what you picked it up for, Chris. So yeah. If you want to just experience the first half hour in the mansion and just stop right there, you'll be fine. I mean, you'll get a taste of the good parts of this game, and that's it. But to actually carry on and keep playing this game, it's going to be just fucking brutal. I mean, that's how I felt. But some people may differ. I mean, this game does have a cult following. So, but again, it may be, as Shane, you've pointed out, the rose-tinted glasses of remembering just the good parts.
Mm-hmm.
So I would ask everyone that still feels good about this game in the year of our Lord 2021 to go back to it and see if it holds up.
All right. Well, I think that about does it for our surprisingly brutal discussion of Clive Barker's Undying.
I think you guys were kinder to Bubsy, actually.
I think we might have been.
I think we were.
Yeah. That was a little unexpected.
This game is better than Bubsy, though, if anyone is curious.
It is better than Bubsy.
You wouldn't know that based on our discussion right now, but yeah. So Ozzy, thank you for joining us on this episode. It was a pleasure to finally have you on a mainline episode. You've graduated. Congratulations.
Yeah, I'll be waiting for my medal. Be waiting for my recognition, but thank you guys. It's been a pleasure. It's been a hoot. Unfortunately, I had to play Undying to get on the episode. But, I think that was a small sacrifice to play. But thank you guys. You guys are doing a great job with the podcast, and I hope you guys continue, to grow. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks, man. And so before I do our little spiel, is there anything that you would like to throw out there to the people listening? Any plugs that you've got?
No, man. I mean, honestly, like I used to have, I used to be very active on Instagram. I used to be part of the podcast of the Region Free Gamers. I did that for 3 years, kind of burned out a little bit. I have a baby on the way. So, I'm not really going to have a ton of time. So not a lot of side projects besides work. So just listen to the Region Free Gamers podcast. I love, the podcast is still kind of our baby. I mean, we built it, from the ground up. And they've just continued to do like really amazing things with it, after I left. So they just brought on Mike Doucette. Mike, he was on like a couple of really fun episodes when I was on. And I kind of call him my spiritual successor because he, like me, is a connoisseur of bad games. And I feel like he's going to bring a lot of that, energy to the podcast, just like talking about games that go beyond, your typical Mario, Zelda, so on and so forth. So go listen to the podcast, go listen to the King of Games, contribute to Retro Hangover, contribute to Region Free Gamers, give them a review. And that's basically my plug, man. Go listen to other people's stuff.
Fair enough. All right. Well, as far as we are concerned, if you are listening to this, then that means you found us. So hi, hello, welcome. We're glad that you're here. If you'd like to engage with the show and by extension with us in some other different ways, we have made that available to you. And not only that, but we've made it very, very easy for you to navigate there because it's all in one place. All you need to do is go to linktree/retro hangover. That's linktr.ee/retro hangover and choose the destination that suits you best, whether that is our public Discord, a Twitch channel, our YouTube channel, our social media accounts, or if you'd like to support the show, in a more concrete fashion, as Ozzy mentioned, you can check out our Patreon as well as the merch store. It's all there for you. So please feel free to go and peruse. And Chris, would you like to take a moment to tell the fine people about our stream Sundays?
Yes, everyone, if you go to twitch.tv/retro hangover, for at least until like mid-November or December, you can watch Shane play video games. I'll be back at some point and listen to his luxurious and arousing voice. Ooh. So you can find that at 9 p.m. Eastern time at twitch.tv/retro hangover. And we hope to see you there. We have fun discussions and everyone just talks about how they get moist to Shane talking.
All right. Well, I suppose with all of that being said, until next time,
play with your scythe sliced joysticks.
Shane here with a quick message. The one rule Chris and I have always gone by regarding advertisements is this. It has to be something we use and can personally vouch for. If you know me, you know I love coffee. And Bones Coffee Company has been my go-to for home brewing for quite some time now. Their small batch beans come in an impressive variety of flavors like Mint Invaders from Chocolate Space, or Electric Unicorn, which I swear tastes exactly like Fruity Pebbles. And the best part? No added sugar or calories involved, just natural flavors infused right into the beans themselves.
Build your own sample pack of 5 4-ounce bags to find out which flavors speak to you, or jump in headfirst with full 12-ounce bags. They've even got K-Cups. Step up your homebrew game with Bones Coffee by visiting bit.ly/RHP Bones. That's bit.ly/RHP BONES.